Sharon.
Good afternoon. My name is Sharon Hopkins, and I'm the director of the Ohio University Procurement Technical Assistance Center. The OU Center serves 62 counties in Ohio. We are part of the statewide network that includes, I guess that covers 78 counties within the state of Ohio. There's a PTAC in Southern Ohio that is considered a regional, and they serve 10 counties. We are funded through the Defense Logistics Agency, the Ohio Department of Development, and Ohio University to provide the services that I'm about to tell you about for your business at no cost to you. So we are funded specifically to help businesses sell to government agencies. So everything that goes into that, we can assist with, from learning about what government buys. And when we say government, we mean at all levels, local, state, and federal. We also assist with receiving bid match notices, which would give you opportunities that are available, that are out there to get you started, to just kind of learn what the government's buying and see the kinds of things that they're purchasing and how they are purchasing it. We do trainings much like today. We partner with SBA to do trainings. We have a monthly training schedule with them. The last several months, we've been doing about 3 a month, and I think this month we're scheduled for 4. So that's another great partner that we have, and one of the things that we do on a continual basis. The PTACs offer one-on-one counseling to help you look at bids. Also, we will walk you through a solicitation package, especially if it's a federal and it's your first time and you don't understand what it's saying. We, I've actually helped people page by page by page. And we can also look over a proposal. If you are submitting proposals, we can look those over, give you suggestions on how to make it better possibly. We assist you in getting registered at the appropriate places within the government arena, as well as we help you understand what the government has that are considered set-aside certifications and how you might qualify for them. And we can assist you as you apply for them and answer questions and those kinds of things as well. We work to, trying to think, what else do we do here? We also work with businesses that are looking to do SBIR, STTR program grants, which are for small business innovative research and small business technology transfer, which includes some sort of a larger organization, a research organization such as a university. And so, once you we walk you through those processes and maybe hopefully you win the award, then we can assist with post-award considerations. The main thing we do after award is people really didn't pay attention to how to get paid. So then, after they've won their award, they're saying, oh my gosh, how do I bill the government? How do I get paid? So we can assist with that as well. So we walk through, we walk you through and can hold your hand or point you in the right directions as much or as little as you need. Every company's different, so your expertise and knowledge is different. So we try to meet you where you are and help you move forward. So again, those are our services. Last year, we do track our clients and what we do with them. And last year, the clients we worked with received awards totaling $1.4 billion. So we're pretty excited about that. And that was through COVID. So we were super excited that that happened last year. So with that, I think that's my little spill. So I'll send it back over to you, Jill.
And that's actually a great segue into what Devana's expertise is in. So I will introduce Devana Mathis. She is our first speaker today. She is a supervisory financial specialist with over 33 years of experience working for the Department of Defense. She uses her skills in contracting and accounts payable to educate and assist customers daily across the globe. She is a powerful force in the workplace and uses her positive attitude and tireless energy to encourage others. And after Devana presents, we will have Jeff Malott, who is Headquarters Air Force Material Command. He is the Director of Small Business Programs. So we are very, very happy to have this collaboration today. And please take good notes when Devana is presenting. I know that we'll have it recorded, but she is a wealth of knowledge. So Devana, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
All right, Jill, thank you so much. And thank you for the invite. So I'm just going to get right to it. Like Jill said, I work for the Defense Finance and Accounting Center, and I'm just going to give you some information about DFAS that you may not be aware of. That once you get a contract, like she said, what do I do? How do I bill? Okay, so how do I get paid? Who do I know to call, or how do I know who to call or when to call? So I'm just going to kind of go over some information that's going to hopefully answer some of those questions for you. But before I do that, I just kind of want to give you some information about DFAS as a whole. So this past fiscal year, from fiscal year 20, we processed over 137 million paid transactions, and that's 6.5 million people and accounts. We've made 4.3 million travel payments. We've paid 12.4 million commercial invoices. We've maintained 98 million general ledger accounts. We manage 1.27 trillion in military retirement and health benefits. We've made $623 billion in disbursements. This is just for the fiscal year 20. We've also managed $619 billion in foreign military sales. So that's foreign government money. We've also accounted for 1,379 active DoD appropriations. So that's DFAS at a whole. Those are all the things, that DFAS does as a whole. So what I'm getting ready to get into is our commercial pay process, so that you understand the things that are actually needed, so you know how to get paid, where to go, what to do, what do these things mean. When you hear terminology, what is the actual pay process, or how do I find stuff in my contract? So we're going to get right into that, and we're going to start off on the difference of vendor pay and contract pay. They are all still accounts payable, but there is a difference in the type of sections that they are. Vendor pay usually pays for contracts that are locally administered. They do not pay contract financing, but they do pay, both have non-contract payments. So they also pay miscellaneous payments as well, which is, we call the non-contractual, which could be tuition fees, all different kinds of fees that we pay. They're less complex contracts. And then I'm also giving you the locations of those sites, which is in Columbus. Columbus processes Air Force, Army, Marine Corps, DLA, which is Defense, DLA and defense agencies. DFAS Indianapolis, is mainly Army and defense agencies. And then we have DFAS Rome, which is all Army. Now, and then we have DFAS Limestone, that's Air Force, and Cleveland, that's Navy. However, if you by chance have an Air Force contract, it could actually be paid in Columbus, Limestone, or in somewhere else. So you want to make sure you don't always assume, if it's strictly Air Force, that this is the particular office that's going to actually process that for payment. So then we're going to get over to the contract pay side, which are mainly contracts that are administered by DCMA. And they actually are more complex contracts, and they actually do financing, progress payments, performance-based payments, commercial items, and so forth. They are multi-year and large dollar contracts. Those is primarily in Columbus, and then we have a small site in DFAS Limestone. So that's just the difference of the two. They're both in accounts payable, but they're two different based on the types of contracts that they are. All right, so three-way match, what does that mean? So before DFAS can begin to make a payment on an invoice, these are the things that we need to have. We need to have the contract. We need to have a valid invoice, which means you're submitting your invoice through wide area workflow. And then we need to know if your product or service has been accepted or not. If we do not have those three things, we cannot even begin the payment process. So just make sure, if you ever have a situation and you want to know if why has your invoice not paid, check to make sure that we at least have the acceptance. Go into wide area workflow and see what the status of your acceptance is. If it's in submitted on the acceptance side, then that means that DFAS does not have that acceptance, and we're unable to begin the pay process because of it. So those are just some of the things. Now, if you see that the status is in a process status in wide area workflow, then we have acceptance, and you would more than likely need to contact your customer care office to find out what process is it at. So once we have those three things, the contract, the invoice, and the acceptance, the next thing, it's going to go through funds validation. And you probably think, well, what does that mean? I have my paper contract. Why do I still need to go through funds validation? So your contract that's all it's a paper contract. The funds validation process for DFAS is we are unable to write bounce checks. So because you have a paper contract, that money has to also be on that line of accounting. If it's not on that line of accounting, then DFAS is unable to complete that pay process. So what happens is we reach out to those stations that holds those lines of accounting, and we'll reach out to them and say, hey, did you get this contract? Here's the contract, here's the line of accounting. This is how much money that's supposed to be put on there. Can you please make sure you obligate this in your accounting system? We have an invoice in-house, okay? So once they obligate that, then that would allow us to validate that the funds are available, and now we can move forward with payment. Okay, so that's what the three-way match is. Those are the things that's important to DFAS in order for us to make sure that we can move forward your payment. However, your SAM registration, if your SAM registration expires, it stops all payments. All payments are stopped if your SAM registration expires. It could be right smack in the middle of some invoices getting ready to pay, and our system will stop it because it does a final check to make sure that your registration is active. If it expires, it just stops everything. Okay, so make sure that your SAM registration is up to date. And if you know that you need to update it, make sure you update it before your payments are going to go out. Because if you wait till the last minute, then it's going to stop your payments. And what's going to happen, we're going to have to wait until it goes through that whole SAM validation process, which could take 10 days. And then we will have to we have to wait till SAM updates our systems electronically before we can even begin. So just make sure that your registration stays up to date, because that will also stop that payment process as well.
And Devana, I just want to add, there's been some major changes to SAM. It's now been
Yes.
fully integrated into Beta SAM.
Yes.
And you have to create, well, most firms will already have had an account on login.gov. But if you haven't gone into SAM recently, well, it's now Beta SAM, you should.
Right, because it's very different compared to what we're used to looking at. I went in there and yes, it is very different. So you definitely want to get familiar with it, and watch your expiration dates, because you want to know how to go in there and make those changes, because it's different now. Thank you, Jill, because yes, it has changed tremendously.
And a good plug to add on to that, Jill and Devana, great plug. The fourth training that Sharon mentioned that we're going to have at the end of the month is going to be on all of the changes that have happened with SAM. So on June 30th, that's a great segue to just give a little plug about our final training for this month. On June 30th, we will be doing it. The Dayton Counselor Billy Grill will be going over all of those changes and doing like a live demo. So you definitely want to make sure that, and even Devana, if you'd like to log in, because it is going to be changes for us as well, you're more than welcome to do that. And then I'll mention that again at the end. Thank you.
Thanks. I was writing that down because I definitely want to see that walkthrough. It is very different.
Yeah, from 10 to 12 on June 30th.
Okay. Thanks. All right. So the commercial pay process. So this is really a flow chart from kind of like beginning to end, is what it is. First of all, DFAS has to get a contract. So how do we get the contracts? We actually get the contracts through EDA. They are sent to us electronically. So, and they're routed to us based on the pay office code that's been put into EDA. So whoever that pay office code is, that document is routed to that DFAS site, and then that DFAS site has a copy of the contract. So we know the contracts are issued, they're sent to us electronically, and then the next step is that you guys, the vendor, y'all get your contracts, and then you submit your invoices after you have performed either ship the product or perform the service in wide area workflow. Once you've done that, depending on your document type, or no matter your document type, we still have to get acceptance. Remember, I talked about acceptance as part of that three-way match. So once the acceptance is done, depending on who all has to accept it, whether it's DCAA, DCMA, depending on your type of document, all those acceptances has to take place before we can move on. Remember, it's part of that three-way process so that we can begin. So then we're going to go down to step 5, where DFAS actually receives that acceptance. So we have the contract, we have the invoice, and we have the receiving report. So then those things are bridged into, if they do not systemically feed into that particular entitlement system, then a person will actually have to manually load and process that into our system for us. Okay. So then those things are actually loaded into the entitlement system. And I mentioned before the pre-validation process. That can be systemic or manual. Systemic means that it's connected to the accounting systems, and the accounting systems will automatically send us something and say yes or no. Manually means it's not a systemic process, and we manually, physically have to send an email to that funds holder or that comptroller or the funding station and say, hey, we have this invoice in house. This is how much it is. This is the line of accounting is trying to use. Is money there or not? And so that's that pre-validation process, to where we have to validate the funds before we're able to move forward.
Hey,
so
Devana,
then, yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I think that some of our attendees are hearing wide area workflow for the first time.
Sorry. Thank you.
That's okay. And so if I understand correctly, wide area workflow is for defense contracts. Is it only defense contracts, or is it all federal contracts?
I think it depends on the office. It's
Okay.
I would say it's not necessarily all defense contracts, but I believe the majority is yes. Wide area workflow is only a billing system. And we call it WAWF, which stands for wide area workflow. It is only an avenue to move the invoices to the appropriate pay office. That's all it's for. It does not make payments. It doesn't do anything. All it does is you enter it into that system, and then based on the codes on the routing table that you have, it will go to those locations based on those codes. All those codes are registered in WAF so that once they'll know where they go, where they belong. So remember, it is just the system that we use so that you can electronically submit your invoices for payment.
And once a contract is signed, contractors will learn about this process. Is that correct? Or they'll be given direction on next steps, or they should be? How does that work from your?
So that's a very good.
I lost your sound. I can't hear you.
Devonna, we think you're on mute.
Yeah, I can't hear you, Devonna. I'm not sure.
Oh, wow.
There you are.
There we go.
Yep, I can hear you.
All right, so oh, now I see the mic. Yeah, I don't know what happened. Sorry.
That's okay.
So it is just an avenue. I'm not sure where I dropped off at, but it is just an avenue of submitting your invoices electronic to your pay office. It does not process any payments whatsoever. Once an invoice has been put into wide area workflow, it can never be deleted. It can be archived, but it can never be deleted. That document is out there. You may void it because you may not need it anymore, but it will always be there. You will always be able to go back and retrieve that.
Devonna?
Yes.
Another quick question. I know once you finish this, you're going to go to the website. Is there a link on the website? Forgive me, they're cutting the grass outside. Is there a link on the website that they can go to, like a quick step guide that will walk them through how to get into wide area workflow?
There is one on the WAF website. I believe there is one on DFAS, but it takes you to the WAF website.
Okay, so maybe that can be something that we can show once you finish your slides. We can walk individuals through to get to and show them that, demonstrate where that is found.
Okay. Yeah, because I may just
I stopped hearing you is when you said that's a great question, and then you launched into the explanation, and then that was all. I could just tell that you were speaking, but not what you were saying. Just like,
oh wow.
The question was when do contractors or when should they create an account in wide area workflow, and are they going to be taught about it, like when they sign a contract and they're good to go?
I really not sure how to answer that. So they may be taught about it through their contracting officer and who they got their contract with. And then other times they just may have the language in the contract and they'll just have to follow that and call WAF. Some contracts will actually put a WAF point of contact in there. So they should reach out to them to get further information or guidance on how to register in WAF.
Okay, thank you.
Opposed to what's the next steps to get registered in WAF.
And it's just reiterating how important it is to read everything in that contract.
Yes, you definitely have to read, because generally there's always a WAF section. It'll say wide area workflow. There is generally, for most contracts that I'm seeing, there is a section that's geared specifically to wide area workflow. And if you don't understand it, you can either reach out to your contracting office Or you can contact your payment office, which is on the front page of your contract in block 15 if you have an 1155, or block 18A if you have a 1449. It's titled Payments Will Be Made By. So if you need any help with WOF, reach out to your pay office. They can help you. We should be able to help you to submit your invoice if it's your very first time and you're really not sure how to go about doing that. We can definitely offer some assistance with submitting your invoice. We just can't tell you what to bill for, but we can definitely walk you through the process to help make sure you can get it submitted correctly.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. So then we were actually at step 7, that once we have the funds have been approved, then we'll go ahead and the payment will actually be dispersed. And I kind of want to add on to this disbursement part. I know as small businesses, mainly contracts are net 30. Sorry, let me back up. Contracts are net 30. But as a small business, we try to pay you within those 15 days. And that means if we have everything we need, we have the contract, we have the invoice, we have the receiving report, we have funds approved, and everything is just perfect, then we can probably accomplish that 15-day turnaround. But if there's a bump in any of those processes, it's going to delay us from meeting that 15 days. That 15 days is all based upon that we have all the documentation that we need to make that payment. So just remember, if we don't have acceptance, there's nothing DFAS can do. Although we have a team that goes out and tries and reaches out to those places and say, hey, we have this invoice in-house. We need the receiving report so that we could begin the pay process. We do have a team that does that. But if you contact your contracting officer, that will also help with us. In addition to what we're doing, you're getting your contracting officer involved. It will definitely help to try to get that process moving. If there's a funding issue, for whatever reason, there's something going on in that accounting system and we're not getting that funds of validation, it's going to hold up that process. We may not be able to meet that 15 days because that has to be resolved in order for us to accomplish that. So I just kind of wanted to make sure I mention the disbursement part because I want you to understand we have to have all the pieces to the puzzle to make that happen. All right. So some common reasons for payment delays, I've talked about some of them. Why hasn't DFAS paid me? Submitting invoices within days of new contractual documents. So what we're saying there is, if you get a contract 3 days ago, you did the job, and then you're billing, and now you're calling and checking for status, you haven't given DFAS enough time to process through the system. So that's what they're saying. Give us time to go get through that process to make sure that we have had sufficient amount of time. Calling us or inquiring a couple days after you submit, there's not possible for us to give you a status on the status of your invoice because we haven't had it long enough and it hasn't touched all those bases yet in order for us to be able to give you a good answer. So you may get one answer today, maybe a different answer the next day as it goes through each stages. The response could change. So all we're asking is to give us at least 10 days from the time you submit it to help get it through that process before you start inquiring about the status of it. Now, I'm not sure, there's a contract deficiency report, we call it CDR. And all that is, for example, if DFAS gets a contract, we look at it and we're like, there's something not right here. It's not constructed right. Something on the contract is wrong. We're not able to load it into our system because of X, Y, and Z. Then what we do, we will send a notice to that contracting office and we will tell them the things that's wrong with that contract and we will ask them to fix it. So while it's in that stage, we can't make any payments because we're not even able to input the contract because there's something wrong with it. And so we will reach out to the contracting office and say, hey, we need you, can you fix this? Or, revise it or do something, because now we have invoices in-house waiting for us to begin the pay process, and we can't because we're trying to get the contract fixed. Or say there was an amendment, maybe there was a modification or amendment, something that changed something on the contract and it didn't work right, and it's still holding up. So I see a question here talking about the CLIN. I'm just going to go ahead and mention that. So the CLIN is the contract.
I don't see the questions. Hang on. I'm failing. Hang on.
No, that's okay. It just popped up.
Okay.
I only saw one. So
right.
the CLIN is contract line item number. So you will hear it called multiple things. You will hear us say item number. You'll hear say CLIN number. I mean, there are just different things, but that's what CLIN stand for, contract line item number. So each particular job or each thing on a contract has a number, whether it's 0001 or 0001AA or 2002 or 2002AA. It's either 4 numeric characters or 6 alphanumerics. I do know that there are some contracts that are doing 6 numerics. We have workarounds, but that's what we're talking about. So if they ask you for an item number, they're talking about that 4-digit number that's on the right-hand side. No, it's on the left-hand side of the CLIN detail. So contract line item number is what that stands for. The line of accounting is the money. It's almost like equivalent, I would say, to your account number and routing numbers. Without those pieces of information, we don't know where to withdraw money from or where to pull it from to pay you. So the line of accounting is very crucial because that tells DFAS where the money is pulled from to make that payment. And then the payment instructions. You really have to pay attention to those payment instructions that your contracting officers are putting out there because DFAS has to abide by them. So that's very important to really read your contract. Or pay office correction. Say that your pay office changed. You're submitting your invoices to the old pay office and they're not the pay office no more because there was an amendment or a modification that came in and changed the pay office that was on your contract to a different office. So now your invoice that was at your old pay office, they're going to have to reject it and you're going to have to void it and you're going to have to start from scratch and submit it to the new pay office. And the clock unfortunately starts when that new pay office gets that invoice. Now, depending on how long it is and the circumstance, you can let that new pay office know, like, hey, we have sent our invoice to the wrong pay office. It's already like 30 days old. Is there anything you can do to try to help, get it through that process? We still need our processing time, but at least it lets us know, okay, we really need to see what we can do to try to push this through. Pushing it through doesn't mean it's going to pay in 2 days. Okay. Pushing it through is making sure we can get it through those steps a little quicker. Because we still got to have the acceptance. We still got to have funds approved. We still have to go through that process. So I just wanted to make sure of that. And then, which I've already mentioned before, your invoice has not been accepted. The receiving report's required. Just remember, we can't pay if we don't know the service has been provided or the product has been shipped and delivered and it's been accepted. Now, just because a product has been shipped doesn't mean the DFAS has to pay for it. It has to be accepted, which means it complies with whatever the requirements of the contract is. So if you shipped 10 parts and say that your acceptor looks at it and like, well, only 5 of them are good. We're only going to accept 5. Guess what? DFAS can only pay you for 5. You may have shipped 10, but they said only 5 are good. So we can only pay you for the quantity that they accept. And then you would have to go back to them to find out why did they not accept the full quantity. And then you would have to bill for it for the remaining balance. So just remember, whatever that quantity is that they accept, that's what DFAS can pay for. Even though you may have billed more, if they accepted less, then less is what DFAS will pay. So improper billing submissions. Again, this is going into making sure you're using the correct document type. And what I mean by that is in wide area workflow, there are various types of documents. The most common ones is called a combo, which is an invoice and a receiving report. This is kind of like the same thing as in the paper world. The invoice, you would mail it straight to your pay office, and the receiving report goes to the acceptor. So DFAS would have your invoice, but we would have to wait until the acceptor accepted that receiving report. Then we get the receiving report. So then we have the 3-way match, and now we can move forward. Or the other common one is a 2-in-1. Generally, a 2-in-1 is for a service. So both the invoice and the receiving report goes to the acceptor first. The acceptor accepts that first. And then once they accept it, then it comes to DFAS. I'm looking at my time and I see what time it is. So I'm going to truck right through this. If you have questions, again, just make sure you put them in the chat. So invoices waiting on pre-validation. I've already gone through that. I talked about the funding process. You'll hear pre-val or pre-validation or funding. And then I talked about the SAM registration as well. So we're going to go into the next screen. Where to find pertinent information in your contract. So this is just kind of like an outline of where different things are in your contract, where your contract number is, where your date of your order is, who issued your contract, who's administering your contract. Mark if for business is, where's the ship to information, who's the payment will be made by. Block 24 contains all the signatures, and then it goes on to the next one, going to the next one. And then here is where we just have some different outlines of terms. Section B, what is section B? What's in section B? What's in section E? So this just kind of tells you the type of information that's in the different sections of your contract. And then we put in the electronic submission of payment request. We put that clause in there. And then the wide area workflow payment instructions, we put that clause out there as well, so that you know where those regulations are. And this is just some helpful hints for a SAM registration. All of you, if you doing business, you have a SAM registration. Also, if you wanted to know how to retrieve the FAR clauses or the DFAR clauses, we've given you the link for that. And Ask DFAS. So Ask DFAS is pretty much a web-based system that DFAS uses to get inquiries via email. And so based on your pay office, you would be able to submit inquiries via that avenue. My Invoice, I'm not sure if you've heard of My Invoice, but My Invoice is a good tool to use to check status before you contact DFAS, okay? My Invoice, you can go in there, put your cage code, and it will give you the status of various different documents that you have submitted for payment. If you do not see an invoice in My Invoice, that means that invoice is not in the entitlement system, okay? So My Invoice is only a reflection of what's in the entitlement system. Every day, My Invoice is updated. A file is sent to My Invoice that came from all the entitlement systems that DFAS has, and it uploads into My Invoice. So if you don't see it in My Invoice, more than likely it hasn't been loaded, and you need to reach out to that DFAS pay office to find out what's going on or what's the status of that, of your invoice. So the next thing, what are some takeaways and some things we want you to know? Know who your contracting officer is. Understand the terms of your contract. And invoice in accordance to them. Your SAM registration. Requests to reject an invoice must be submitted in writing. That's why we have you do it in Ask DFAS. If you call us and you want to have something rejected, we're going to ask you to put it in writing, because writing will cover us for that rejection. Know who your pay office is. And then the more complex your contracts, the more risk of delays. So really knowing what's written in your contract is going to be very, very important. So the prompt pay terms, knowing your pay terms. And then the self-help tools, which is my invoice, a wide area workflow. You can look in wide area workflow for a status, but you're not necessarily going to get a pay status. You will get a status of the actual document. So process in WAF does not mean you've been paid. It's just the status of the document. Okay. So in conclusion for this, I have my contract now. What? Keep a copy of it handy when you're billing. So you're making sure that you're loading the correct information in wide area workflow. Submitting your invoice, checking to make sure, and make sure it's correct before you submit it too. Double check it before you submit it so that you can make sure it's going through correctly. And then if not paid within 15 days, contact your pay office. There was a question. I was trying to read it. It was clear.
Vaughn, I got a couple questions.
Okay.
So are we going to make the slides available, Sharon? Traditionally, we've posted them on the OU PTAC website. Devonna, can we post those? Yeah, your slides?
Yes, these
Okay.
you can post, yes.
Okay, and the other question, what causes an invoice to be canceled? Is this generally something from the vendor side or the DoD side?
Well, it really depends on your terminology. So from a DFAS, we don't actually cancel an invoice. So do you mean reject an invoice? So if an invoice is rejected, it could be rejected for various reasons. You may not have billed per contract. The CLIN number that you use may not be correct, or the unit of measure may not be right, or you may not have used the right currency. There could be a wide range of reasons why an invoice can be rejected. So I just want to make sure you use the word canceled. Is that what you were meaning? Like if we actually reject an invoice back to you?
I'm fairly certain they did mean reject.
Okay.
And I think that also just goes back to what you're saying. Make sure you have a copy of your contract handy so that you're putting the right information in, because if they're not doing it correctly, how long is the delay? How long can the delay be? Let me ask that instead.
So if you do not realize that you made an error when you billed, the delay could take maybe 10 days before they even, get to look at it to see that something is wrong with it. Now, there are times the system wide area workflow will systemically suspend it, meaning if you bill for CLIN, let's say 0001, but the contract says your CLIN number is 2002, it'll suspend it because it can't hit against the actual pay system. It'll suspend because there's a discrepancy in the item number. So when that technician actually goes to look at it, then that's when they realize that you billed wrong, and that's when it would get rejected. So it could take some time before they actually realize that there was something wrong that you submitted on that invoice.
So just pay attention, and then pay attention again, and look again.
Right. And if you know that you did it, or go back over it, you can always go back and look at your invoices as soon as you hit submit. You can go back and look at it, and then if you know, immediately notify us. So through Ask DFAS, that way we could try to get to it sooner instead of waiting until the actual pay team gets to it. If you submit that request to the care center, we'll probably see it first.
Okay, very good. I've got another question. What does PIEE stand for?
Oh, wait, I know what it stands for. Oh, wow. I believe
wait, there's someone that knows. Well, not that you don't know, Devana. You just deal with the acronym. Procurement Integrated Enterprise.
Yes, yes.
All right.
And so just remember, PIEE is like a hotel. WAF is a room inside that hotel. My Invoice is a room inside that hotel. EDA is a room inside that hotel. So it's a suite. And Wide Area Workflow and the other things are just rooms inside of that suite.
I love that analogy. Nice. That works for me.
Yeah, I think it's, to me, it gives a better picture.
Yes.
Of it.
Very good. That's what I see so far in the chat.
Okay. Shonda, I think we're gonna, I only have a few minutes left. What we're gonna do is I'm gonna take you to the DFAS website, and just so that you can find how to find your pay office based on what's written in your contract. It just kind of lets you know there's a wealth of information on the DFAS website that is very helpful to you. And I just want to make sure that at least you know how to contact us, whether it's Columbus, whether it's Rome, whether it's Indianapolis or Cleveland. How do you get to us? So I just want to make sure that we can get you through that so that you'll know how to do that.
And Shonda, if you're trying to share the screen to the internet, I'm not seeing that.
I am, but I think I have too many things open. So give me a second here. So if you can engage for a minute while I close some things down.
That's Rome, Italy, correct? Not Rome, Ohio.
Right. That's Rome, New York, actually.
Oh, Rome, New York. Okay.
It is Rome, New York. Never go in the winter. That's all I'm going to say. If you go to the winter, you may just be snowed in and you won't be able to find you or the car. Okay. So don't go there in the winter. I've done it. Don't want to ever do it again. It was more snow than I've ever wanted to see. But it's regular to them. I'm in Ohio. We don't get that much snow.
There it is.
This snow covered like their porch, their front, the front of the house. They just,
That must be like upstate New York. Well, I know that New York City gets a lot of snow.
Yes, it is upstate New York. And don't go to Limestone, Maine in the winter either. I
was wondering where Limestone was. Okay, so really nice northern states with the snowy. It sounds wonderful.
Stay away from them in the winter. That's all I want to say.
Can you see see the website now?
I see success.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Just walk me through where you want me to go.
All right. So before we move any further, I just want to let you know the website is www.dfas.mil. That's the website.
Somebody type that in the chat.
Please. I will do that. Yes. But I wasn't listening, Devana. You said
www.dfas.mil.
Well, I was just distracted. Okay, got it.
That's okay. That's okay. That's okay.
Oh, send it private. Oh. All right, never mind. Nothing.
Okay. All right, so you're gonna get to the DFAS homepage, and then what you're gonna click on, you can stay right there, Shonda. So what you're gonna click on as a vendor, you will click on contractors and vendors, because that's the place, that's what you're interested in by you being a contractor or vendor. You're not a civilian employee, you're not a retired military or annuitant or an actual military member. If you want to submit stuff through Ask DFAS, thank you. If you want to submit stuff through Ask DFAS, you can look over on the far right-hand side, scroll back up just a little bit, and you'll see the small, you see Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, you see Ask DFAS, you would click on that. So there is a PIEE before you go any further. If you go over to the far left, you see PIEE, so you would definitely want to click on there to get into more information about WAF. So
Do you want me to click there now?
You can, because I only got 3 minutes. So
you're okay. We can.
Oh, okay. So this just kind of gives you some information about PIEE, what it provides, you know, the technology. I think if you scroll down, it gives you the benefits of it, and it gives you the website right there. It tells you about the machine setup. So making sure that your actual computer that you're using is set up properly so that you can use it. And then it talks about the tools that's in there as well. And then if you see, it says click here for PIEE training links. So you would click there.
I can't click.
Is the word here up underlined?
No, it's not a hyperlink.
Okay. All right. So if you would go to that page, actually click on the link that says the WAFEB.mil. Well, that's not right. No, it's not WAWF anymore. It's actually PIEE. So they haven't updated that page. I do apologize. Oh, it took you to it. All right. So you would actually, I got to go full screen so I can see yours. All right.
Oh, you know what? Can I go full screen?
Yeah, you're fine. I'm good.
Okay.
All right. So right here, it talks about new features and some resources that you would actually be able to go in. You can click on the resources and scroll down. It talks about registration, documentation setup, information lookup. Now, remember, one thing I didn't mention, if when you go into wide area workflow and you are submitting your invoice and you put in the code for your acceptor and WAF will not let you go any further, what that's telling you is that that acceptor is not registered in wide area workflow and no documentations can be forwarded to them. So if you ever have that happen, you have to go back to your contracting officer to find out what's the acceptance code that you need to use so that you can submit your invoices. Let's see, videos and documenting workflow roles. So under documentation, there are some videos and guides there. Click on the very first one with the little head on the far left-hand side.
Okay, I can't, hang on.
Scroll down.
I think I have to go underneath, go to resource.
Yeah, click on where it says videos and guides, or yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Go back to,
in.
Yeah, resources. And then scroll down.
Oh, that's not I have to go to resources. It's not a hyperlink.
It's hard for me to tell on the screen. So for example, if you wanted to get some WAF training, click on WAF, the WAWF link. And then you would go to, you would be on the right-hand side under vendor roles, and you would click on the word vendor, the first one, yeah. And then you would scroll down and then go to where it says the third one down says document submission web. And this just kind of gives you the flow process of WAF and how that works. Scroll down a little bit more. Is that the end of that page? Okay. Yeah, so that would give you the flow and how that works. Now, if you click on document types, there we go. Now, this is a demo of every invoice. So depending on the type of invoice you submit, you can do the interactive demo, or you can pull up the PDF version. It takes you screen by screen.
That's good.
And like I said, the most common ones, when we really get into the training piece, is invoice and receiving report with the word combo at the end.
That one.
No, not that one. That's combo 101. Oh, they updated it. Oh, okay. So yeah, they've updated since I was on here last. So yes, but it looks like it's still in process because they took down the demo. And then the other one is the invoices 2 and 1 services only. Those are the common ones. But you see there's a wealth of types of documents that you can actually submit, but you have to read your contract. Generally, if they don't put it in there, if it's a product, it's generally a combo. If it's a service, it's generally a 2-in-1. That's if they don't put in there what type of document you need to submit. If they put in there a type of document, that is what you have to submit. So that takes you to the tutorials for all the different types of documents.
Okay.
So I need you to go get out of that screen, or you can close that. I need to go back. You can probably close that one and go to the DFAS site, which is the tab beside that. You can close that one up at the top tab because you're not logged in. At the very top.
Do you want me to go back to the home page?
No, I just want you to close that tab in its entirety. Go over, it's your very last, next to your last tab. Go all the way to your tabs at the top.
I can't really, the way it's set up, I can't really see.
So click back on the DFAS tab then.
Let me just go back out because that'll be easier for me. Back to the home page.
Okay.
This or the very home. This.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
All right. So over on the left-hand side, click on the second one down. It says Dodak Customer Service. All right. So what this is a list of all Dodaks that DFAS pays.
What is a Dodak, if you could explain?
So a Dodak is like, so a Dodak for the government is sort of the same as, it's a code that identifies a site. It maybe it's more like an address, I guess. I'm trying to think of how to really compare that. It's maybe like an address.
Okay.
Almost like the address of knowing you're trying to go to a store, you need the address. Well, this code is the address. Once you plug that code in, it'll give you all kinds of information about that particular location. Okay.
Thank you.
So in WAF actually has those codes built in. They already have the addresses in there and everything. So it will know where to route that document to based on that code. So this is just a list of pay office codes that DFAS processes for payment. And this will also let you know where you need to go for help. It'll give you their customer service number if you want to talk to a live person, and it has the Ask DFAS link in there if you want to send them something via email. And if you just scroll down the page, it just lists all the various codes, which is in your contract on the front page in block 15 of 1155 and 18A, I believe, of 1449. And this way you'll know where to go for help. And so I'm kind of like there's a wealth of information out here on DFAS.mil. Over on that left-hand side, Shauna, go back, scroll up and go back over to the left-hand side. Yeah, there's a lot of information. The DoD guidebook for miscellaneous payments, some tools and systems. Yeah.
And if Devonna, if they need to contact like a customer service person, if they've navigated this and still have questions, is there a way for them to reach a human being?
Yes. So if you scroll down, Shonda, on the one that you're looking at right now, stay right there. I think right there. So if you look at the bottom on the far right-hand corner, the very last column, at the bottom, it has the 800 number. And for this one, it has the option. Stay right there.
Oh, right here.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. It's at the bottom of each section.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yeah. So for that one, it's for the pay codes HQ033789. They're telling you that's the phone number you would need to call if your contract has that code on it.
Okay. And then for the next one, it's
yes,
this one. Okay.
And they would know just by looking at their contract if they have that HQ 303 or 304. Then okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's really helpful. Does anyone have any more questions for Devonna?
Did I answer all the questions that you asked? Do I need to?
Well, it's a lot, especially if you're first getting started. But the good news is that there are people like you that provide so much assistance to contractors. So, the website it has a lot of information, but if you're new to it, it's going to be confusing, and that's okay.
Yes.
And better yet, it's being recorded, so you can always go back and visit the link afterward.
Yes.
Several times if you need to.
Right. Like I said, if there's a question I didn't answer, let me know, because I want to make sure you walk away with that answer.
Okay. All right. Do I have Devonna's contact information? Devonna, do you have an email that I can put into the chat?
Uh-oh. Yes.
Or
is it on your slides?
No, it's not.
Okay.
No, it's not on my slides. Generally, I don't think we put our email addresses on the slide for public posting. But I can definitely make sure that you have my email address, because even if you're not paid by my specific site, and I know whose site it belongs to, I do have counterparts that I reach out to them at the other DFAS sites to try to help. So I will give you my address so you can put it in the chat.
Okay.
Can I? Okay, so it's my first name, DEVONA.M.Mathis.CIV for civilian @mail.mil.
Okay, that's Devonna, DEVONA.M.Mathis, MATHIS.CIV @mail.mil.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. It was great to see you virtually. And
yes.
It's always a pleasure. I feel like I learn something every time I hear you present.
Right. I appreciate the invite, and I appreciate seeing people, not just in the house.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to adjust to that.
I don't know what my building looked like. It's been so long since I've been there. Yes.
It's going to be an adjustment, isn't it, for all of us?
Will.
Yep.
Yes, it will. It will indeed. So thank you again.
Yes, thank you. And I am going to introduce our next presenter, Jeff Malott. Very thankful to have you here too. I'll just read a little bit from your bio. Jeff Malott is the Headquarters Air Force Materiel Command Director of Small Business Programs at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. He is responsible for building and strengthening AFMC's relationship with small business enterprises and new start firms. This is important as small businesses can quickly bring innovation, new technologies, and process efficiencies to the Air Force mission. In fiscal year 20, the AFMC Small Business Program exceeded $8.3 billion and leveraged our nation's small businesses in performing critical requirements for from research and development to professional engineering services and weapon system sustainment. Previously, he served as Chief Services and Strategic Acquisition Division at Headquarters AFMC Contracting Directorate, leading the management and oversight of his services acquisition portfolio exceeding $70 billion. So we have a lot of experience in both of our presenters. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, Jeff.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Jill. And thank you for inviting me today. And it's a pleasure to speak to all of you. I just, as Jill just mentioned, I'm the Director of Small Business Programs for Headquarters Air Force Materiel Command. And I'm going to give a brief description as we move on here about, what is Air Force Materiel Command, so you can get an idea of that. And where and what I do within that construct. And possibly contacts across our enterprise, which is nationwide. But first off, I just wanted to show you here on the very first chart that there is go back one, Jill, I'm sorry, or Shonda, thank you, is there is my email address. It's afmc.sb.workflow@us.af.mil, and that's our workflow address. And if you send something into that, someone in my office will get that directed in the right way. Okay, and I also wanted to say one thing. I'm being extemporaneous here, but about Dodaks, I really appreciated Devana's presentation. Yeah, seeing that side, I've been doing this for a very long time, of course, and working with DFAS, right, on contractors being paid, from small businesses all the way up to our major defense contractors, Boeing and Lockheed, for instance. When it comes to a Dodak, how does the Air Force, what is that used in the Air Force, right? Well, that Dodak is, as Devana says, kind of like an address. What it does is it identifies for us who the buying office was that bought that executed the acquisition, right? So a lot of AFMC Dodaks will start with an F, and I'm just going to make up one here, say FA 3672, right? That would tell you potentially, I'm again making this up, so it's not exact. I'd have to get the Dodak list out. It would tell you what office within Air Force Research Laboratory executed that acquisition, right? So it could have been, that would identify an office that acquires for potentially if your contract was with, let's say, the Materials Directorate. So that would identify to us and to the system of where that was bought. Now our contract numbers then going on from that within the Air Force will then identify the year the contract was awarded, and that's 2 digits, right? And it'll see, so it'll have that Dodak, a dash, 2 digits for the year, and then another dash for the type of contract it is. If it's let's say a delivery order type contract where we issue a contract that then we can issue orders in the future, it'll have like a D there for delivery order. And then it'll have a dash and another series of numbers, 4 numbers, and that's just our identifier of the contract. So the Dodak is pretty important, and it's good to know, but it's easy to understand the sense of thinking of it as an address, but also if you're working with the Air Force, it's the buying office or the acquisition office that awarded the contract to you. So that's their number is their Dodak. So moving on to the next chart. Okay, so I told you that I would give you just a brief description of Air Force Materiel Command. Air Force Materiel Command is, and not a lot of folks, I mean, when I deal with the small business community, and also just even across the board, are as familiar with us as an organization, right? than with our centers, okay? But Air Force Materiel Command in total, we represent over 70% of the Air Force acquisition budget. So everything that's executed for the Air Force is executed in dollars by Air Force Materiel Command. So think about it, what we call ourselves, Materiel Command. That means we're supplying the Air Force across the board. And when you're thinking of that, right, that goes everything from base operations, could be paving of roads and roofs on buildings and HVAC, all the way to our most advanced weapon systems and aircraft, like the new tanker, KC-40, the new bomber, F-22 is although not currently acquired, we still manage that program within the command. Also F-35, the new F-15, and all those subsystems associated, you know, radars, targeting. So across the board, it's bought through Air Force Materiel Command. I'm trying to keep this super simple. And again, apologies up front because my charts are also very simple, but I'm just trying to present it and have to admit I'm the one that did them. So I'm not a PowerPoint ranger. So looking at this chart here, we're talking about Air Force Materiel Command. It's headquartered here at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. If you're familiar with Wright-Pat, we're over in Area A. It's the big building, right, really by the gate, the main gate there, with the planes in kind of like a formation in statuary in front of it. So, and so we have centers, 6 centers, with various operating locations. So the first center I'm going to address is the Air Force Installation and Mission Support Center at Joint Base San Antonio, Texas. Okay, so that's one of our centers. Within that center, there's 2 other centers that are of particular interest many times to small businesses because they do a lot of business that has a big footprint in the small business community. And that is the Air Force Civil Engineering Center and the Air Force Installation Contracting Center. Now, that Air Force Civil Engineering Center is also located, headquartered at Joint Base San Antonio in Texas. And then the Air Force Installation Contracting Center is located here at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. Now, the first center there is where we generate, when I'm talking about AFCEC, is where they generate all those construction requirements and manage the construction across the Air Force. Air Force Installation Contracting Center, right? They do all of that installation mission support across the Air Force. So they buy all those base operating mission type, everything that I mentioned before, you know, you could be, you know, paving, medical, roofing, HVAC, and that's just to name a very few things. And so that all operates under that construct of the Air Force Installation Mission Support Center, and they do much more like security forces, our non-appropriated funds, and they also manage all of those operational funds that come through the Air Force out to the other MAGCOMs and bases. So they have a big role there across the Air Force. Then the next one that some of you may have heard of before is the Air Force Lifecycle Management Center. And it's also headquartered here at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. And if you're familiar with how the base at Wright-Pat is constructed, their headquartered is in Area B. And they have operating locations also across the US. I'm going to name 3 of them. One is at Hanscom Air Force Base in Massachusetts, outside of Boston. One is at Eglin Air Force Base in Florida in the Northern Panhandle. And another, which I don't have listed here, is at Gunter Air Force Base in Alabama. these bases and what Air Force Lifecycle Management Center acquires is really what I just spoke about, is those weapon systems. Okay, so if you're thinking the Air Force, of course, it's a lot of airplanes, right? And those supporting weapon systems, like I talked about, sensors, reconnaissance, targeting, also weapons themselves. And so missiles, right, for the aircraft. And also many times the sustainment. If you're familiar at all with how the Air Force operates and maintains and keeps our aircraft flying, it's through what we have a sustainment trail that typically is, or in many cases, what we call contractor logistics support. And that's where a contractor sustains the aircraft for us. And in many cases, you know, more advanced systems, right? That we need that. We may not in the Air Force or be able to do it ourselves because of the complexity, right? And so that is also acquired there. So Air Force Lifecycle Management Center, very critical to the execution of the mission of those aircraft, right? Because they're buying them, they're sustaining them, delivering them to the other MAJCOMs, to those combatant commands, what we call them, like Air Combat Command, Air Mobility Command, those commands that are out there actually executing the missions, right, of the Air Force. Now I'm going to move on to our, to a third center is Air Force Nuclear Weapons Center, and that's headquartered at Kirtland Air Force Base, New Mexico. Again, when I go through these titles of the centers with you, they are pretty clear on what they deal with and what they do. In this case, the Nuclear Weapons Center is very much critical to the maintenance, sustainment, and upgrading of our nuclear forces. Next chart. Okay, so fourth center within the Air Force Material Command construct is the Air Force Research Laboratory, and it's also headquartered here at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Area B, we call it. And they have various lab locations across the United States. For example, at Kirtland Air Force Base, and then again, I thought it was interesting. We just talked about Rome. They're also in Rome, New York. There's a large AFRL campus there. Again, what AFRL does, and they have a very strong small business program, is they're doing that basic to advanced research for everything that comes that's currently in the Air Force inventory and what is to come. And small business has a very large presence within AFRL in the research world. Moving on, if you may have heard of what we call the Small Business Innovative Research Program, or SBIR program. That program is extremely active and receives significant leadership. When I'm talking leadership, I'm talking about Air Force and DoD level, as well as congressional interest. And that is how we really push very quickly forward in bringing technology and innovation into the Air Force inventory, going from basic research all the way into prototyping, and then hopefully into production and delivery to the Air Force. So that SBIR program, which right now is managed by another acronym you may have heard of, is called AFWorks. And AFWorks, Air Force Works, is charged with that of pursuing innovation, and they have Agility Prime is one of their main programs right now. If you haven't heard of it, just go to their site and check it out. AFWorks, you just Google AFWorks, AFWERX. And it's the flying car. I'll put it in simple terms, right? I'm not a technical person, but so they are rapidly pursuing technologies that are going to have both, radical changes both in the military and commercial. So they're bringing all that commercialization and military use together. So super interesting and exciting. And the SBIR program, if you're in the high-tech realm, is really where you need to focus your efforts. Then the next center I'm going to talk about real quick is Air Force Sustainment Center, and it's headquartered at Tinker Air Force Base, Oklahoma, with operating locations at Hill Air Force Base in Utah and Robbins Air Force Base in Georgia. Again, they do exactly what their name says. They do sustainment of all of our aircraft. If you've ever heard of program depot maintenance, when an aircraft goes through and is really deconstructed and put back together, and to maintain its flight worthiness, I'm assuming since you're participating in this and saw the Air Force participation, that you're aware, the Air Force flies aircraft platforms that are very, very old, like the B-52, but they're still highly effective and highly used. Why? It's because we have a very vigorous and very strong sustainment process and program depot maintenance. And so these aircraft are flying for very extended periods of time, very safely, and in many cases are being modified and upgraded to the to current standards. So they do great work. A part of the Sustainment Center is what we call the supply chain. And I know that gets a lot of interest in the news just globally right now because of how the supply chain is so-called broken, from the pandemic. And of course, the Air Force and DoD in general is very interested in the supply chain, right? And how do we bring security and efficiency to the supply chain? Because it's critical, right, to our execution of the mission. And then the final center I'm going to address quickly is the Air Force Test Center. Again, they do exactly what they say. So when we buy a new aircraft or some kind of other technology or platform, they test it before we bring it into the inventory. So they have test ranges both at Edwards Air Force Base in California and Eglin Air Force Base in Florida. And then if many folks are unaware, the Air Force has really a national asset in Tennessee at Arnold Air Force Base, Tennessee. It's the wind tunnel facility. The most advanced probably wind tunnel testing facility in the world. And it's a national asset for the United States for aircraft and engine testing, supersonic, hypersonic testing within the wind tunnel environment. So that gives you just an idea of what Air Force Material Command, and with that, just a couple of charts, you're probably going, oh wow, it's a huge organization. And yes, it is. We're quite large. I'd say 70 to 80,000 civilian employees plus military. Moving on to the next chart. Okay. So given that, baseline of what we are and what we represent, you can imagine, when Jill talked about our small business program in FY20, so that's the government fiscal year, and that runs from 1 October to 30 September every year. So when we talk about FY20, that is 1 October 2019 through 30 September 2020. That's the government fiscal year, FY20. In FY20, we had over 8.3 billion in small business spend. Okay, so we awarded or obligated $8.3 billion to small business. We, out of a 46.3 billion, what we call eligible spend. So that's the spend that's defined in law that is open for small business participation. So we achieved a 17.74% small business actual percentage of our spend. And we exceeded our goal significantly by 12.03%. Now, I'm going to tell you the significance of that. Now, our spend is actually greater than 46.3 because I'm going to show here in the sub-bullet, eligible spend is contract awards available for small business. Exclusions, and this is by law, is those statutory mandated sources and those be made on behalf of foreign governments. And we do a lot of buying for foreign governments called foreign military sales. And so, so when I'm telling you a little bit earlier about when, we're buying things like the new bomber and we're doing modifications of sustainment to the F-22 and some of these very advanced weapon systems that have been acquired and developed from our major defense contractors like Boeing and Lockheed. Those are significant expenditures. So you can, and obviously small businesses, although they maybe could do a good job, typically or cannot do those types of efforts, right? And but we still, out of everything else, we were able to have 8.3 billion in small business spend. So it's tremendous. I'm very excited. So there's a great potential and opportunity within Air Force Materiel Command for small business. So all those socioeconomic categories, we also, and so I'm just giving you the dollars here just to give you an idea of the magnitude. Let's take small disadvantaged veteran-owned business right there. We had over 1 billion in spend and obligations to small disadvantaged veteran-owned businesses. So significant spend, 2.36 billion to small disadvantaged. So again, great opportunity. We have a very vigorous and strong small business program. And so that just gives you an overview. Next chart, please.
Jeff, I have a question of what constitutes a small disadvantaged business?
Well, Jill, why don't you answer that one? Because that we look to the SBA to tell us that.
Well, all right. Yeah, I thought that's something that we could probably also answer. Yes. Small disadvantaged business is a self-certification. So if your gross receipts are half the size standard of your primary NAICS code, and you are socially and economically disadvantaged, and you're considered a small disadvantaged business. But within that category falls 8A companies. So 8A companies, that is an actual certification that businesses would have to get that are qualified as small and disadvantaged. There are additional qualifications to the 8A program that I'm not going to get into a whole lot today. But if any of you have questions about it, both Shonda and I work in the 8A program at the SBA. But an SDB is a self-certification. You can self-certify as a small disadvantaged business, I believe, in SAM. But the 8A program is a certification process that goes through the SBA.
Thank you, Jill. Yeah, I was scared to answer that because I knew I wouldn't describe it well. And so super excited by that. And thank you. And again, when she introduced me and I introduced myself, remember I'm at headquarters level. And so sometimes those details the folks at the center are dealing with, and I'm not necessarily. So I can trip myself up when it gets to that. So here are our AFMC, the top 20 top 10 NAICS that we, and those North American industry classifications that we acquired in FY20. And you'll see that and you'll understand aircraft manufacturing is number one, right? R&D, engineering services, other aircraft parts, aircraft engines and parts manufacturing. Right there on that final column, you'll see how much goes to small business in each one of those. When it comes to aircraft manufacturing, only 1.72% goes to small business, right? However, when you're talking about 18.8 billion, that 1.72 does turn out to be a fairly significant number. So there's opportunities there. But look at the next one, R&D. When I told you that there was a great, very strong small business presence within R&D. So out of that 9.2 billion that we spent in R&D, 37% went to small business. And so you'll see that that's how just to interpret that chart. So it gives you an idea if you're in those industries, that you have those NAICS, and you're telling you that we definitely have, a strong appetite for those, right? And again, this is only the top 10, and number 10 is still over $1 billion. And so I don't discourage you from contacting us, engaging with us, even if you're not within these NAICS codes, because there's plenty more that we buy. Next chart. Okay, so I just wanted to talk to you. When I mentioned, because I do understand there is a strong small business presence in construction and architect and engineering. And so when I mentioned earlier about AFCAC Air Force Civil Engineering Center as part of AFIMSC, or the Air Force Installation and Mission Support Center, they had significant spend in FY20. So that center spent over $633 million. And AFCAC was a part of that spend. And so for construction projects, you can find those. They publish them on the AFCAC homepage. So you go to the AFCAC homepage. I've given you the link there. You click on business, then click on the fiscal year 21 planning task order. And then there are different task order lists for construction, environmental, and military housing, family housing. So I'm just providing that, if you are in that business, it'll give you the idea of the tasks that are out there that we are pursuing. And also remember, when it comes to construction, we are doing this many times. The Army Corps of Engineers is actually executing, but they may be issuing a contract for the effort. So again, another good idea, if you're in this business and you haven't already, which I would think you would have, is connecting with the Army Corps of Engineers. Next chart. Okay, what I wanted to, this is the points of contact across the command, okay? So I've given you the directors of each of the centers, the small business program directors, and their email addresses. I'm going to tell you that they're all very committed to expanding and strengthening our small business program. It's an imperative at the Air Force level. We look at it from both meeting our Air Force and Department of Defense mission, but also as strengthening the national industrial base, especially coming out of the past year and the pandemic and the effects of that. I'm just going to talk here real quick. We spent over $2.2 billion on COVID response. A lot of that is what we call the Defense Industrial Base, DIB, another government type acronym, right? We can talk in acronyms, but the Defense Industrial Base. And so we're reinvigorating, in concert with the Department of Health and Human Services, reinvigorating the nation's medical related industrial base. Again, the number is not exact. It's probably around 450 million of that was to small business for all sorts of different activities in the COVID response. Some of them that come to mind to me was for expanding the nasal swab production in the United States, went to a small business. So like I said, lots of opportunities out there. And here are your contacts. Now, if you're thinking about what I just told you and the business you're in, then you would know of what center to contact. But the easy button in all of this is you can, email my workflow address that I gave you on the first chart. And you can also look at our website. I think on that very first chart, I identified our public facing website, which also gives you these points of contacts, phone numbers, etc. So, and also upcoming events that we sponsored, Air Force Material Command Small Business Program. So again, we're another resource, and we are a very large customer nationally, as well as for small business. So I think right now what I want to do is just, do we have any questions, Jill or Shonda, or should I just kind of address some of the ideas about tips and tricks of, dealing with us after you get a contract award?
I don't see any questions yet, but I think that would be wonderful
Okay.
because there's just a lot of unknowns once a company does get their first contract.
Yep. So now, basically I've told you, if you're here in Ohio, you've got a really big customer right here outside of Dayton. And we buy nationally, right? We're buying for the Air Force across the world. Okay. So you get your award. And so what do you need to do? And so there's a couple things, and we kind of touched on them earlier, but it's imperative that you know who your contracting officer is. And then you know who your contracting officer representative is, or your core, if you have a service contract. Now, there's two types of contracts out there. Typically, we look at supply or service. A supply is when you're just delivering a good. I can make it easy, if you're buying it, honestly, when we buy aircraft, they're supplies, right? They come in, we buy them. Someone out there signs off on what we call a DD-250, or the acceptance of that item, and they go into AWF, just like Devonna talked about. Boeing and Lockheed have to do it too, right? And so, and they make, they had invoice for that payment. So, you need to know who that core is, the contracting officer representative, and who your CO is. Initially, if I had never had a contract with us before, I would ask for some type of kickoff meeting with the CEO and what we call the requirement owner or program manager. Okay. And in many of our acquisitions, if it's more of a formalized acquisition, we'll have what we call a program manager. In a lot of cases, when we're buying like supplies and services for installations, it may have a requirement owner. So, that's some terms you may want to think of. Keeping it simple is knowing who is managing your program from the requirement or technical side. Many times I think small businesses out there are always pointing everything to the contracting officer, which is good. You need to, keep the CO informed, but the CEO may not necessarily, remember, they're not technical folks. They're typically folks with business degrees, right? They're doing the business side of the house. They may not understand your technical requirement, right? They know what it is, right? But, technically, and how you are executing, they may not know exactly how that is done. So basically, hey, thanks, Billy, for sharing the Army Corps website. I appreciate that. I just saw that pop up. Anyway, so you need to, build those relationships, right? The other thing is, again, performance. I can't stress that enough. If you perform well, you are going to be successful. And that's true with both, in the civil, outside of the government, outside the Air Force, but, also within the Air Force. So perform. And if you have any questions, ask them. Do not hold back, and think, well, I shouldn't ask this, but because if you perform and you're going in a direction that you think you should be because of not quite understanding where we are, it's just not going to be, a successful conclusion. So interact, right, with your CO and your core, and your contract officer representative is when I say core, and your program manager and requirement owner.
Jeff, can you explain a little bit about the core and
yeah, right. Yeah, core. What is a core and what do they do? Okay. I'm assuming most of you are familiar with what we call the Federal Acquisition Regulation, right? And in that Federal Acquisition Regulation, it tells us how we do acquisition and who's responsible for it. Well, in many cases, you'll read it's the contracting officer. They're responsible for ensuring that contract is performed. They're responsible for, processing those payments, for you, like signing off and saying the work has been done, accepting that work, giving you feedback if you're going off course, et cetera, giving you a scope read on the contract. They really do have the brunt of all the responsibility in our Air Force or DoD contracting, right? So what they do and what is allowed for is an appointment of a contracting officer representative, and this person is technically typically on the requirements or technical side of the house, and they're the one that is giving you, as the contractor, they're representing the contractor, and they're working with you and monitoring your performance. And especially this does apply when you have a service contract, which a lot of small business contracts are service contracts. So you're providing a service to us, and the core has been appointed by the contracting officer after receiving appropriate training on what they can and cannot do. One of the things they cannot do is direct you to do something. Only the CO can do that. So I'm going to make that simple for you. Let's say you've got a contract and you're to, you're building a road for us, and the requirement was, pave this road from, building, from here to here, with, one left turn, right? And that's it. If the Corps cannot tell you, oh, wait a minute, we've changed, that should now be a right. Only the contracting officer can tell you to do that, right? So a Corps is limited in that regard. So let's say the Corps is, what they do though is monitor your performance and give feedback to the contracting officer. So if in the unlikely chance that you have received a contract from us and you are not meeting our requirement, let's say you have, I'm making this super easy, is you have a contract for cleaning one of our buildings. That contract requires you to clean the building and run the vacuum, let's say, twice a week. The Corps has been appointed who works in that building, and they notice you're only vacuuming once a week. They report that to the contracting officer. There is a process for that, for a reporting of that, and then the contracting officer will be dealing with that failure to perform with the firm, with the business, right? So the Corps represents the contractor in monitoring performance, right? The Corps can also be the one that's going in and approving your invoicing. So basically, Corps is super important. You need to know who they are. You need to work with them. But again, if it comes into that you are questioning what that Corps tells you to do, that's when you engage with the contracting officer, because remember, the Corps cannot tell you to change and tell you, for instance, in my very simple explanation, to start telling you to vacuum 3 times a week when your contract says 2. Or even to tell you to be the one to say, hey, back off the vacuuming, only do it once a week. Well, that should raise a flag to you as a company to go to the contracting officer and say, I've been told this requirement has changed. Please, modify my contract appropriately. And that can be done. Okay.
So essentially,
go ahead.
Any deviation from the contract needs to go to the contracting officer, not the customer, not the Corps, right, not anyone but the contracting officer, because that has come up before where the customer may ask a contractor to do a change. And if you're new to government contracting, you want to please your customer. And so you may do that without realizing that that's not something that you should do, because it needs to come from the contracting officer.
Yep,
And
right on.
you can get yourself in a bit of a pickle if you are, and the customer is whoever wants the product or service that you're providing. You will be in communication with a lot of different professionals within the government when you have a contract. It's just making sure that you understand who is the primary point of contact between you and the work that's being performed, and that's the contracting officer.
Right
If there's
on.
any changes, I mean, you got to speak with the core, with the operations of the contract. But if there's any change, it's got to be the contracting officer.
And I want to add on to that by saying, that list of POCs that I've given you, those are what we are the small business offices. They are the small businesses offices at all the centers. And I gave you the lead for each of the centers, but they have staffs, right, that are actually out there working with the acquisition teams and small businesses. So if you're having an issue and you're new, even if you're not new, and you're having an issue with your core, with your CO, with whatever, engage with our small business offices. We can help you. We can reach out. We can help do the interpretation many times. And it's just because if you haven't done a lot of business with the Air Force and DOD, and as you've noticed, even within my discussion here, we have a lot of acronyms, right? That I can rattle off to people that I work with, and really within the Air Force, that we all understand. You do not. And so those types of, I call it interpretations, right? Doing that kind of, our small business professionals, we call them SBPs, are there within the command to help you. So again, that's a third prong of who you need to engage with and know who is out there, is the small business professional associated with the center or with the Air Force organization you are supporting. Because even if you are not, have been awarded a contract out of Air Force Materiel Command, the Air Force in general, let's say you received your award contract from Air Mobility Command, they have a small business director as well as small business professionals out there within their organization helping and supporting small business. So that's Air Force wide. Do we have any questions?
I think that there's a question about point of contacts for purchasing agents. And Jeff, I know that your presentation has a listing of the small business professionals for the Air Force. Rashid, if you're looking for points of contact outside of the Air Force, that's something that you can meet with your PTAC office to get more information on. Say that you're trying to target multiple federal agencies through your market research. Your PTAC can help you with that, but points of contact are also available on every agency website. And so I'll type into the chat, if you search by the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization, this is another acronym, we call it the OSDBU offices. So they would be Jeff's equivalent counterparts at other federal agencies. Every federal agency has small business professionals whose job it is to help you navigate doing business with their agency. But as for getting like individual contracting officers or cores, you would not, it just depends on the requirement, because contracting officers are assigned to various requirements, and you would find those requirements on FedBizOps and through doing market research. And it's not FedBizOps anymore. I'm probably going to say FedBizOps until the end of my career, but no, now you go to Beta SAM. And Billy, I know that you're listening. So Beta SAM is where the FedBizOps now is. That's where you start doing market research to find out who buys what you sell. And PTACs teach all of that. So
oh, yeah. Can I just add on to that answer? I just, within Air Force Materiel Command, because, you know, as I've talked to you all about what we do here, and again, you know, we have very strong presence here in Dayton area. And of course, you know, what we buy is nationwide and worldwide, really. Remember that, yeah, contracting officers, good point of contact, purchasing, what we call buyers, or those are people out there, contract negotiators or administrators. They're the ones that are working, and but they don't necessarily sign the contract. Only contracting officers sign the contract. But remember, they're buying and acquiring based on a requirement that they do not generate. Okay. They are buying based on our, what I remember when I talked about requirement owners and program managers, organizations that have the actual requirement. So for instance, I'm going to again make this easy. When I'm using the road paving example, the contracting officer didn't come up with the requirement to pave that road. The base that the road is being placed on, and probably Air Force Civil Engineering Center, they identified that requirement and then decided to fund it. And then the contracting officer executes it, okay? So I'm just giving you a little nuance there is when it comes to marketing or looking for opportunities, and since Billy Grill, and we've already pointed him out a couple times in the PTAC, he's done some great webinars with Wright Brothers Institute on teaching you how to fish within what we called Beta SAM, which is now being called SAM. It's no longer Beta, but looking for those opportunities, which then would identify the contracting officer that has been associated, or the contracting office associated with previous acquisitions of the same. So if I was a small business looking, I do paving, I'm looking for potential paving customers. Well, I'm going in and into SAM saying, well, where has the Air Force or the federal government bought paving before, right? And it would identify those organizations, right? Again, another caution there is, and it's unfortunate, right, for you, but there's a certain amount of, you have to dig in, is that personnel changes. So a CO, contracting officer, identified for a particular acquisition the last time may not be the one this time, right? And so it's really good to know who the requiring organization is, and then start doing the digging that way. I'm going to tell you something, and I didn't mention this earlier, and I want to tell you one of the real keys that I think, and it's simple, but it takes just a little effort, is understanding our mission. Okay, you're coming and wanting to market to us, and let's say you've gotten a contract. Understand what our mission is in the Air Force, the command, and the center you're buying for. So if you've received an award from Air Force Research Laboratory, let's say, I think it's incumbent on you to understand what AFRL's mission is and where they're going, so you have an understanding of how your effort fits in with their mission. When it comes to Air Force Research Laboratory, they have one of the best web presences out there. When it comes to within Air Force Materiel Command and even the Air Force. Within that, there's the S&T, Science and Technology 2030 study. Hey, you need to know that, because that's going to tell you where AFRL is going, right, in the next decade. And so that will give you the insight that you can then interact with those researchers and those scientists with an understanding of where they're going, because that's where AFRL is focused. So do that across the board. So even if you're out there doing, and I think it's just as important as everything else we do. If you're doing, the paving of that road on this base, know what we're doing, right? What is AFCEC doing? And know how we use that base, right? And, have an understanding. Once you do that and you start making those connections, then you become part of the ecosystem, right? and you have an understanding and you can start learning to talk the lingo. But you need to do that. Anything else?
Do we have any more questions for Jeff?
Oh, I'm so glad Billy is on my staff. No, anyway, Billy, very good. I like that you shared the AFMC strategic plan. In there, you will see where Air Force Material Command is going as a command, and all those centers. And remember, as I've told you, Air Force Material Command, very large. Our commander is General Arnold Bunch. And when I say general, that means he's a 4-star. So we have a 4-star commander, General Bunch. Our deputy commander is a 3-star general, Lieutenant General Schaefer. Our executive director is a civilian, and her name is Miss Patricia Young. And she is our highest ranking civilian in Air Force Material Command. And so, again, that will give you just an idea of, where Air Force Material Command is going. And I see we're over 2 minutes, so apologies.
That is perfectly all right. It's always a learning experience. We did have a question, where can we retrieve the slides for later viewing? And that is going to be on the OU PTAC website. Give it about, and Sharon, you can correct it. Give it a couple of days before it's posted. But if you Google OU PTAC, you will be able, or Ohio University PTAC, you'll be able to get to their website. And I want to say thank you very much to both of our presenters, Devana Mathis and Jeff Malott. It was very valuable information today, and I hope that all of you that are on the webinar today can join us next week, June 24th, for continuing contracting success, a small business perspective. And Shonda, did you want to wrap it up? It seems like I went ahead and started anyway, didn't I? And then on June 30th, we have Billy Grill is going to be presenting the changes in the System Forward Management, or SAM.
Yes, teamwork makes the dream work, Jill. So yes, please join us next week. Sharon just typed in the link to access the today's link for the recording. So you can access today's probably next week, because it takes a few days. So just check back next week. It should be uploaded. If you want next, the very first part 1, last Thursday, where we talked about the PCR and CMR, that was a very great training. Please go out and access that. That should be up there now. And as Jill said, we will be sending out the probably tomorrow, the flyer to register for. Next Thursday, we'll have a great panel discussion of small businesses. Today's series, well, this month's series was focused on best practices for continued contract success. And so we had perspective from PCR, CMR today, great information from both Devana and Jeff. From a government's perspective, because a lot of times we don't hear from them. So it's always great to get tools from them. And then we're going to wrap it up from the actual small businesses, those that have boots on the ground, that have contracts. So we have 5 panelists. They have all confirmed. Really looking forward to them joining us. I believe that is it today. We went all the way to our time. So it was a great session today. Again, thank you so much, Devana. DFAS, we do want to have, hopefully we can get Devana back next fiscal year. And we talked about doing a series and focusing on DFAS, an overview of just some of the things, all of what DFAS does. Someone from their small business office to talk about the contracting aspects. And then Devana is more specifically focused on post-award. So hopefully we can get her back next fiscal year. We'll set something up, and definitely we want to get Jeff back. We talked about doing another series with some other individuals, maybe a contracting officer, a core, someone from the small business office, so you could get some additional feedback from there. One of the things we love doing is working with PTAC, and these webinars, hopefully you found that they are very, not only just informative, but we do try to stay on the cutting edge as it relates to what's going on in government contracting and how it can benefit you as a small business. We really do try to keep our eyes and ears open to the ground and keep you abreast of the resources that are out there, and then also keep you plugged in with other small businesses that are actually getting contracts. So tune in next week so that you can hear from those that are getting contracts and what they're going to share with you, the tips. So again, thank you to our presenters today. Thank you for joining us. Have a beautiful day. It is wonderful weather. And please join us next Thursday from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. And then on the 30th from 10 a.m. to 12 noon for SAM, the new updates with SAM. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you again,
you.
Devon and Jeff.
Thank you.
Welcome.